last video, we made a ton of progress on my 2001 Trans Am WS6. Finished up the cam swap, most importantly, and got our speed engineering, true duals, and long tube headers installed in this thing. Primed the fuel system, checked for leaks, crossed our fingers and hit the key, and this thing roared right to life. Woo! But kind of band-aided some stuff just so we could get it running, and because we were waiting on parts. Cooling system isn't completely full because I was missing a line running from the radiator to the steam port over there. We obviously, as you guys recall, had to put back on the factory ugly valve covers and coils because I was waiting for a coil extension harness. And the car wouldn't run that well, probably because the tune needs adjustment. And I also was thinking I might need to make an adjustment to this throttle stop here. It's all the way down, so the throttle blade is basically all the way closed. But there's still a lot to do before we can get this thing to idle and looking good with those smooth valve covers that I built or painted 2 episodes ago. So I got the garage cleaned up, got all my new parts laid out here on the table, got some coolant, got the 1/4" heater hose that we're gonna need to run from the radiator to the steam port. And then I'm gonna rob the hose clamps off this random hose I found in my bin there. These are the harnesses I was waiting for. So these basically allow us to go from my coil extension harness to the coils themselves, and are not 24-year-old wiring that's gonna be brittle and crack like the original ones I was worried about. Also came with other extensions, but these are only 2 feet. I think I'm gonna go with 3 feet ones. We'll save these for another project. Still gonna make all my spark plug wires, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of work to do, so let's jump in. Well, many wire sets later, my old MSD wire crimper vice thing finally gave up the ghost and cracked. I think I bought this in 2017 to do my first set of custom wires, which was on the C6Z06. So unfortunately, I can't finish my wire project. Right now anyways, I did order a crimper, like a really nice one. I say really nice, it's definitely from my boy Jeff Bezos, and probably country of origin, China. But it's like not a janky vice thing, it's like an actual crimper that I can use for future builds and should be a lot more robust than this 3D printed plastic one from 10 years ago. But I did get all of the wires made on the driver's side, so cylinders 1, 3, 5, and 7, and then even use these nifty little loom things to kind of organize them. They look great, as I think I showed in the B-roll footage. So you're probably asking, why are they out of the car? And it's because I think I'm gonna redo these crimps, just because this thing was cracked for, I think, all of them, and I thought it might be all right, but now that I'm looking at it, I just wanna make sure that they're really good. So I'm gonna redo those, but you know, once you get in the rhythm, it goes pretty fast. More importantly, boom, smooth valve covers are back on. Man, does that look good. So much cleaner than having the coils up there. I think I might, oh, we're out of batteries. I think I might see if I can relocate this traction control box. Back in the day, guys used to put them back here, and then instead of having these wires coming across the intake, you can kind of shove them back there, and man, this will look clean. But yeah, plug wires are coming along. Also, as you guys will notice, I ended up using the straight connectors. Just turns out that the way the headers are and the way the wires need to run on this side, the straight plugs work a lot better. The passenger side, I'm definitely going to utilize the 90s. But yeah, glad that I had both the straight and the 90s, and maybe that will help someone in the future that's trying to do a custom plug wire set on one of these with long tube headers. Also ripped out not only the air pump lines that spidered all the way back to the intake back there, but also came up through here. And I ripped out that aftermarket alarm thing. Well, kind of, there's definitely a wire going under the dash there that I haven't ripped out yet. But hopefully the car starts. I don't know how spidered into the ignition that thing is, but we'll check that, you know, on the other side of the firewall a little later. Here's the valve covers, air pump lines, the old alarm, whatever. Also, you guys saw I vacuum filled the cooling system using my cooling system vacuum filler. I'll leave a link for this thing in the description, but I love this thing. Love to use it. There is nothing worse than finishing building something on your motor and filling it up with coolant and then hearing coolant dribbling on the ground because you forgot to, you know, plug in one of those head coolant crossover plugs or something way in the back of the head. Or you have a more serious problem, unfortunately. But the coolant vacuum filler pulls a vacuum on the whole cooling system, and then you can shut the valve and make sure that it holds. And you also get to see all these lines collapse. So that's part of it. The other part is, now you know there's no air bubbles in your cooling system. I really don't think that these particular cars are all that hard to bleed. I probably could have just filled it at the radiator and been totally fine. But I have the tool, A, and B, I have flashbacks of the modular dual overhead cam V8s like the Cobra that are an absolute nightmare to bleed. And it's good to have a tool like that. So, coolant's done. I made that steam port line. The air hoses are out. We're working on the plug wires, and the smooth valve covers are in. So hopefully that tool arrives soon and we can get back at this. All right, spark plug wires are finally done. This new tool, very, very nice. Works great. So passenger side over here, basically routed them under the headers. If you guys can see those down there. Nothing touching. Tried to run everything nice and clean, use some zip ties, followed the factory loom there. I'm also gonna clean this up here, but check this out. This loom for the coil harness extension was able to follow this factory one, so I'll probably zip tie all that up. Looks much, much cleaner than having the coil packs up here. On this side, we use the straight boot ends. Comes right off the plugs there, right out the headers, looks really nice. I think I'm gonna end up routing this one down here. Wow, I need to vacuum back there. Look at all those leaves. I think that one's sitting on the steering shaft. So maybe I'll run that one under the steering shaft and we'll zip tie all these up together. But everything is hooked up, and I think we're ready to hit the key and see if this thing is going to fire up with my basically new ignition system. And as you guys saw in the B-roll footage, I busted out HP tuners and flashed a new tune on this thing, which is actually a subscriber from the channel. He runs and operates, I think it's called Zero Fox Tuning. And I think he's like a Gen 3 expert. And he was nice enough to send me a tune with a couple of revisions, you know, idle airflow, things like that, that should allow this thing to start, run, and drive until we can get on the dyno. So huge shout out to him. His information will be in the description. And hopefully we can get this thing running and idling and hear this thing chop. So let's jump in, see if we can get this thing to start. I did rip out, as I mentioned, that alarm thing. And I still don't know where this wire under the dash goes. So I'm hoping that I didn't, you know, cause any like theft problems that would prevent this thing from starting. But if it doesn't start, I know where I'm going to look first. But maybe it was just like an alarm and it doesn't wire into the like anti-theft or anything like that. But we'll see. Let's just turn the key and see what happens. Well, all right, I was afraid of that. So there's two potential causes for this. I'm just gonna go ahead and assume that we don't have spark. I actually think I can smell fuel already. One, the aftermarket alarm that we just ripped out without looking at where the wires went somehow spiders under the dash here and interferes with our, you know, ignition system. So I think that's where I'm gonna start because I want to rip it all out anyways. If that solves our problem, great. If not, then we can go to what the other potential issue is, and that is that the coils aren't getting power. I did mount them, you know, using rubber isolators off that air pump. So I guess it's possible that the coils don't have a ground, but again, I think they have a separate ground wire. I don't think they ground on the valve covers in the factory configuration. So, and I think all my connections are right. I think everything's hooked up like it should be. So I think that's less likely, but let me get this thing off the lift and push it forward so I can open this door all the way and see if I can get under the dash and see what's going on with this thing. Gotta make enough room for these 17-foot long doors. Oh, good enough. Uh-oh. Oh boy. I don't know, this doesn't look factory. I don't know if that looks factory. I guess I'm gonna start with where that brown wire goes through the firewall there and we'll go from there. I'm gonna dig in here a little bit and see what I can find. There's like speaker, is this speaker wire? Like did this thing have aftermarket speakers in it at one point? It certainly doesn't now. It still has the, oh I guess it does have aftermarket head unit. Why did they run speaker wire? I don't know. Let me put the camera down and dig in here a little bit. Things are escalating. We're supposed to be listening to a cammed LS1 right now, and instead we're pulling the interior apart. I've been in this game long enough to know that working under the dash is terrible enough as is. Save yourself the aggravation, spend the 5 minutes, just pull the whole front seat out, and give yourself basically a bed to lay down in and kind of look up under the dash. You'll thank me later. Also, I might have something I want to try on that seat. We'll talk about later, maybe even in another video, but the front seat is out. And we got kind of a mess here, and that's going to kind of show us the reason that we might have all this aftermarket wiring. Look at all this glass. Possible this car was broken into at one point, and then someone installed look what I found. This whole thing is a Python 700, so I guess it goes a lot farther than just that one wire. I think this was like a 90s or early 2000s, basically quote-unquote top-of-the-line car alarm system. And now I'm going to need to figure out a way to rip it all out, see how deep it goes in here. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is the reason that the car is not starting, is because it detects that a wire has been cut and therefore cuts power to the injectors or coils or something. But I'm going to lay in here and try and remove as much of this as possible, and we'll see how far we get. And then, of course, we can vacuum all this up. We'll count up our change, keep track of, you know, this for the final cost breakdown on this car. And what is this? Is this Canada? Can't read. It's like all... got like acid all over it. Anyways, I'm gonna get to laying under the dash. Always a fun job, seeing how much of this stuff I can cut out. Probably gonna be difficult to film, but I'll bring you guys along for, you know, for what I can. But I want to hear this car chopping, idling without me having to feather the gas. So I'm gonna get this done, and we'll see if we can get this thing started. Spaghetti. Couple hours later, we've got this whole Python 700 system removed from the car. It was quite the process. Again, never fun working under the dash. Spidered all into multiple wires under the driver's side, and then it looks like they ran speaker wire over to, you know, a couple connectors and wires over on this side, but I think I got all of it out. I do my best to do my wiring as clean as possible, so I retaped stuff using that fabric tape like they would have used from the factory, crimped connections and then heat shrunk them, and then just got everything real nice and clean. So I think we got all of this mess out of there. Based on the speaker wire, my guess is this was done at, you know, maybe an audio shop back in the day. I guess if it works, you know, sure, why not? But kind of weird to see speaker wire in a, you know, electronics install like this. But she should be out of there. Interior is all back together. Just gave the carpet a quick vacuum and loosely bolted the seat back in, because again, I got an idea for this that I think we're gonna end up taking it out sooner than later. But battery is hooked back up. Let's see if we change anything. I don't have a ton of confidence because I didn't see anything that looked like it might be related to the coils, but we'll see. Either way, like I said, I wanted that thing out. Now it's out. Let's see if we change anything. Nope. Okay, so again, not a waste of time. I wanted that thing out of there. It's out. The wiring is all cleaned up. So one less thing on the list. Now let's figure out why it seems the coils and or are not getting power or we're not getting spark. So I'm gonna push this thing back into the lift bay, get it up, and just start tracing power. Probably from these connectors right here. We know we should have power. I'll look up the diagram. We should have power, I think, on this pink wire. And then we'll just start chasing it down to the coils. If we have power there, then we know it's between the coils and the spark plugs, which I really doubt, because even if we had a bad plug or bad wire or two, it would sputter. But it appears it's getting 0 spark at all right now. So I'm just gonna start checking some of the basics and we'll figure this out. What happens? Clearly got spark now. All right, 20 or so minutes of poking around later. I think I have some sort of update. So I started way down at the coil injectors, or the coil wiring down here, I should say. This is our extension harness going up to basically the valve cover, which then breaks into this sub harness that we were waiting for in the last video. Now we can check power here at this coil. We'll see, we're just using coil number 1 for example. Black is ground, brown is signal ground, purple is signal, and yellow is switched 12 volts. So basically these 2 outside wires are providing power for the coil itself, and these 2 inside wires are your signal wires. So I checked for power here at the yellow wire, and we did have power here, so safe to assume that our coils are getting power. So then I hooked up a spark tester. I actually came over here on bank 2 and was not getting any spark. So then I said, okay, well, if I am getting spark, hopefully, or at least power to the coils, but no spark, what if I hook up the original coil pack and see if I get spark? And still nothing happened. So I started poking around with the injector fuses because I didn't want the motor filling with gasoline while I'm trying to diagnose a spark issue. Then I came back up here and was kind of probing around for this pink wire is going to be your power to the coil wire, and then all these other colors are your signal wire. So blue would be signal for, let's call it cylinder number 1. So we should have seen that pulsing when we were checking for spark. None of the coils are actually hooked up over here. I was just trying to confirm that we had coils or spark signal from the PCM, and you guys saw it. The car just kind of fired off after I put these 2 injector fuses back in. I thought that meant injectors, but clearly that circuit is linked to the coils somehow, because if you come over here, power on. Let me turn this off so you guys can see better. Using my handy dandy paper clip. We come over to Mr. Pink over here. Everything's hard to do with one hand. Boom. We have power. So we have power going to the coils. Signal is obviously harder to check, but I think we've just proven that we now have spark, at least on that bank. But I only had that once I plugged these injector fuses back in. But then again, I think that those were plugged in, I'm almost positive those were plugged in when we first started this whole spark debacle a little while ago. So I don't know, but I've now proven that there's no issue with like the PCM or anything like that. And I've also proven that we successfully uninstalled our Python alarm thing there. So now I need to figure out what's going on here. Clearly we have, again, with the factory coils just kind of hanging out down there, and we now know this from the wiring diagrams too, the coils are not grounded via the head, so it's fine that they're down there. Is it the MSD coils, or is it, was there a loose connection somewhere? So I think what I'm going to do now is plug this side back in with the MSD coils using that harness right there and check for spark. And if we don't have spark, then we know it's a problem either with the coils or maybe this harness right here. Because as of right now in this configuration with the, factory coils through the 36-inch extension harness, we have spark. So let's backtrack from there and see where we get. You frigged me! Well, who could have predicted this? The $18 coil harnesses that I rushed to get here for the last video appear to be bad. Because they're not happy about it, but I somehow bent these super brittle factory coil harness wires into these MSD plugs, and you guys heard it and saw it. This thing fired right off. Now, I confirmed I had power at this, but you guys also saw when I put my test light on the injector signal, we got nothing. So something in this beautiful loomed assembly here is either wrong or disconnected. And I could probably take this all apart and spend an hour or two figuring that out. But for 18 bucks, I'm just gonna email the seller and say, you're selling junk, and see if I can find something higher quality. Or maybe we just make the factory coil harness wires work. Clearly they're not, super happy about being bent like at 90 degrees to fit those tight coils, but they work. Yeah, I think that was our issue. So let me do the same thing there to the driver's side, hook that last plug back up, plug the injectors back in, which this time, for all this testing, I just unplugged the harness itself, just so we're not flooding the engine with fuel while we test for spark. And see if this thing will light off. All right. Driver's side coil harness is bent into shape. Hopefully we didn't break any wires. They are so brittle. They're in, injectors are plugged back in. We've obviously had the battery charger running. Let's see what this thing does. Okay, that is progress. Although it doesn't seem like it, the car is running. Because at the end of the last video, it was running more or less the same. I'm still counting it as progress because we are officially running off of our relocated coils and custom-made coil wires. The car still does not seem to want to idle even with the updated tune, but I think I might need to make some adjustments here at the throttle body. Look at this throttle body right here, this BBK that came off the car that had a factory cam, and look at that throttle screw. It was open pretty significantly. This one I haven't touched and it's all the way closed, so we might need to bring that up a little bit, get some air into this thing. Oh, and appears that at most we were running on 7 right there. Forgot the spark tester. Whoops. But yeah, we might need to crank this open a little bit, get a little bit more airflow. But it is extremely late right now, and I really don't want to risk waking up the baby. And I think I'm just gonna call it quits. But I'll be right back on this thing tomorrow morning. Let's get that, cylinder number, what is that? 2, hooked up. Open that idle screw a little bit, see if we can get this thing to idle for the first time on its own, and maybe even get it up to temperature. the scanner going. There we go. All right, let's see what happens. Hey-o! No throttle, she's idling. Little rough, but woo! Sure sign of a big cam right there, boys. Oh, she's coming around. Woo! Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Woo! Oh, she sounds rowdy. Sounds good up here. And it appears we are firing on all 8. 8 good plug wires. Shoo! She's alive! Woo! Look at it shaking. Probably should have opened a garage door before I did that. Oh. Okay, we're back. Oh man, that thing sounds awesome. Woo! Little adjustment to the throttle blade. We're in business. Running on all 8. All right, so I think what I'm gonna do real quick is check for leaks, let this place air out, and then if everything's good, we will fire it up again and maybe pull it out for the first time in a while now and let it get up to temperature, make sure we're good to go. But whoo, not only does this thing look good now, it sounds incredible. Speed Engineering exhaust sounds great. Doesn't seem too terribly loud. Love it. Let her warm up. Get her nice and hot. Halfway through the work week, right?
Yeah.
UPS just dropped off my throttle plate adapter from Holley. I don't know, I guess now we got two of them. He's got an LS in the UPS truck. LSs make the world go round. He was actually complaining about the active fuel management was messing up on the truck. I said, don't worry, I'll hook you up with one of these. Bring that thing back. Still sounds great. No leaks. Temp's coming up slowly. We're at 165. Can't remember what the stock thermostat is in these things. Come back to idle? All right. Come on. Come on. There she goes. About 15-20 minutes now. We're at 192 there. It says 210 on the gauge, but I'd be more apt to trust that. The heat is nice and hot in here. I got that all cranked up. Tons and tons of oil pressure. Man, this thing sounds so healthy, so good. I love it. I don't see any leaks yet. The fans have not come on yet, so I'm gonna let this thing cool just a little bit. Double check that our rad is still topped off. Now let's get this thing on the ground and back it out under its own power for the first time in gotta be 4 weeks, maybe more, can't remember. Let's do it. Man, it has been a long time since this garage bay was free. No leaks, it's just some condensation from the exhaust. Shoo! That bright red in the sun is something else. That's more like it. See how she fired right up that time though? I guess the fuel trims are kind of figuring their stuff out. Woo. Look at that intake in the sun though. Damn. Can't wait to clean up some of this wiring and stuff. There she is though. Moves under her own power. Beautiful. this has been an extremely productive video. I know at the end of the last one, we kind of had this thing running, but that was almost a stretch. You really had to get into the throttle and it wasn't really running all that well. Now we are running on a brand new ignition system, new MSD coils, custom made wires. The smooth valve covers are finally on. We deleted that awful 2000s car alarm thing. Got an updated tune in this thing, got it running, got it up to temperature, and even backed it out for the first time in weeks. This thing sounds insane and it's running so beautifully. There's still a decent amount to do here though. I gotta get some new coil harnesses on order to replace those junk ones from Amazon, get those wires fully cleaned up. I still need to clean up a lot of this so it's nice and tight and we can really show off these smooth valve covers. I'd like to, try and, polish and clean these shock towers and just give the engine bay a really good once over. Probably try and tuck some of this in. Got to build a catch can for this thing, figure out where we're gonna mount that. All those parts just showed up. And most importantly, I've got a really, really special treat for you guys. We're gonna kind of transition over to the visual side of this thing for the next video. Those parts are right behind me. They showed up this week and I'm so excited about them. So if you guys are enjoying this content and are enjoying the Trans Am series, give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the algorithm. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. You know the deal. I'll catch you in the next one.